Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back, everybody. If you find yourself, I want to use the word stuck. A lot of people use that to describe what's going on in their life. They just feel stuck. There's more for them out there. You feel that, your job's okay, but you could achieve more, but it's not happening. Personal relationships, you're kind of just, circling the airport, but you're not really going anywhere. There's probably a reason for that you don't realize. And I'm going to say this word, and it's kind of an alarming word, but it answers and addresses pretty much everything that I just mentioned, and that is trauma. You probably have trauma in your life previously, and there's all different types of trauma. You hear that word and you think of something major, and it could be, but there's also other things out there, and it goes back to your childhood. We're going to talk about that today, learn a lot. She's somebody that helps people from 5 to 85 address all of these issues and move their lives forward. She is an amazing psychotherapist. She works with so many people, and this is in her wheelhouse. Susan, although I can call her Susie, I believe, Engel joins us here on the program. How are you?
I am well. Thank you, Steve. I'm so happy to be here.
Wonderful to have you here, because this is something that many of us don't realize. And when you know, then you really know. I call it putting the pieces together, why a lot of adults act the way they do. And it goes back to is it mostly your childhood where this stuff comes from?
Well, yes. And if you think about it, our childhood experience, not to sound cliche that everything stems from our childhood, but really our foundation begins even in our neurosystem, information networks. So things stem from our childhood. And whether people are patient with us, whether people teach us, or whether people scold us and shame us, make a huge impact in future experiences. So as the years go on, maybe certain experiences harken back to the genesis of our self-worth. And it's really, really curious. It's not made up. And I think there's so much research now on how our brain functions. When I say neural networks or information networks, it's true. It's the way our brain and our mind categorizes day-to-day life. So we may have experiences early in childhood, like I said, that may be informative and positive and resilience building, or we may have experiences that are shaming and humiliating. And there goes the information networks. So
it's my understanding, and I don't know if I have this right, but at certain ages, and every child is different, but for the most part, is there certain ages that children internalize things, and that's where it kind of begins? Like, for example, between the ages of 5 and 7, very formative things that you were dealing with then, address this. Let's say when you were 3, the average child around 3, has an understanding of something, whatever that something is, and that also, pilots them. Are there certain markers there?
Yes, I think that's an important question, because any stage of development could impact our future, or any stage of development, any experience in any given stage of development could impact our future. And what I mean by that is, so in the past, there was a lot of research and foundational work to understand the development of children. So you're right. There's a difference between a 3-year-old developing and a 6-year-old developing and a 9-year-old developing and a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old. However, with research now, they can see, or we are informed, that even experiences in utero
Mm.
can affect the development of a
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
Even experiences on day one, for example, what is the birth process? Was it a smooth going, or was it a shock to everybody's system, including the mother who's giving birth, the mother and father who's stressed about that, or did it go smoothly? Or were there unforeseen experiences? So it's a good question, but I would say at any stage of development within our lives, within our existence,
Mm.
we could be impacted by certain experiences.
So let's go to that big word, trauma. And I,
Yes,
I describe it, there are big T traumas and little T traumas.
we speak the same
Oh, look
language.
at that. Okay, wonderful.
And putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and I love it. So, yes.
So let's talk about examples of, and go hypothetical here, just to illustrate what a big T trauma is or could be, and the same thing for a little T.
Yes. So a big T trauma is uh, I live in a war zone, or I survived an airplane crash,
Right. Car
or
accident or something.
or a car accident. Those are big T traumas. They're really easy to identify for the public and society to be able to be accepting that that may be a difficult experience for any individual to process.
Mm.
But little T traumas are, hypothetically, um, maybe a family goes on a day at the park, and the family tells all the children in the family, we're not going to the monkey bars today, or we're not playing on the swing set today. We're only staying in this part of the park. And then one of the children goes on the swing set and maybe falls off the swing set.
Mm, mm-hmm.
And, we have two examples. One could be where a caregiver, the parent, might go and see that the child is in distress and hug the child and comfort the child and say, look, it was only an accident. Of course, you were curious about the swing set. But another example might be that a caregiver or a parent might run to the child and pick the child up and, shout in the child's face,
Mm.
I told you not to go near that swing set, and now you've ruined the day. And so that child would internalize a very simple but impactful concept about self-worth. I am bad. And
Mm.
here goes the information network. And then future mistakes, future accidents, future simple learning processes could fall into this bin of I'm not as good as, or I am bad.
Mm.
And
I think it could even be something as so apparently insignificant, but not. So let's say you're 7, you do a painting, you make the sky green, you love your painting, and you show your mom or dad, and they're like, "Oh, that is so nice. That really came out." Now, hold on a minute there. The sky's blue. It's not green. Come on, you do better than that. Now, as a
right.
parent, you're just trying to help your kid because maybe you don't want them to get made fun of, and you just want them, make it blue. Just if kids don't say anything, or whatever it might be. And what did you just hear as that 7-year-old? Oh, it's not good enough. And then you add another one onto that of whatever it might be. Oh, not good enough. Little T trauma, but is it true that the feeling of not being good enough is one of the most major things that everybody in some shape, way, and form deal with?
Yes, I
Mm.
think so. I think that it's a very common experience. I think it's a very common internalization. I think that that's a great example of an unconscious adult not realizing that all they have to ask is, what did you paint? And the child will be happy to describe this beautiful, and this is the sky, and this is not correcting the child, but letting the
Right.
child be free in
Yes.
how he or she wants to paint or interprets anything that they want to do. You know,
Mm.
so I think that the there's a common experience of not feeling good enough. And it
Yeah.
really depends. What I boil everything down to, this is just my personal understanding of the knowledge I've gained over time, is it comes down to insecurity. So we
Mm.
all might have fleeting experiences of, ooh, I'm not good enough. However, if we work on ourselves or we have enough of a foundation and feel secure, then that I'm not good enough is not so
Prevalent, impactful.
prevalent.
Yeah.
Prevalent, great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that just comes with working with somebody like you, where you identify these things, you walk the journey, you do the work. That's what they all say. You do the work on yourself. You still have insecurities. We all have them. That's the way it's life. We're always not, somebody might have an insecurity about one thing, the other person, that doesn't bother me, but this bothers me over here. But they get minimized, or you're able to put them where they need to go in your mind, as opposed to letting it take over your very being.
Right. Or when you say take over your very being, it has a lot to do with how people sometimes describe themselves as depressed or as anxious. And they label themselves this way when actually, for the other type of people who rebound from this, they have a different level of resilience and a different foundation about themselves. And it doesn't have to be as prevalent.
Mm.
So it just seeps in all sorts of directions. And this is an
Wow.
important conversation that we're having because our society really doesn't understand that that trauma is as prevalent as it is, because it's so subtle.
Oh.
And I just moved my office from one town to Bloomfield, from Avon to Bloomfield here in Connecticut. And the movers, this was like almost 2 years ago. And the movers were these two young men, very healthy because they're lifting weights all day, lifting the furniture.
Hmm.
And they asked me, what do I do? And I explained to them, really, my specialization is trauma. I work with people with all symptoms, but my specialization is trauma. And I work with people from age 5 to 85. And one of the younger of the two men, one said, bless you, like, bless your heart. And the other, who's this young man, maybe just out of high school, he said, everybody has trauma.
Wow.
I felt like giving him a platinum star.
Susie, you gave me chills because, not to sound old, but younger generation is getting this. They accept spiritualism. They accept a lot of what's going on. They're getting it finally. Where maybe older people stuck in their ways, and maybe they're looking at this woo-woo stuff, if you will. It's really not. And just kind of put it off to the side. So I want to do this, if we may. I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours. What traumas did you identify in your childhood that you believe impacted your life later?
Yes.
And of course, you identified them, you worked on them, and worked through them, if you will.
And then you have to do this work,
I would
right?
imagine.
I was like, you're a pretty developed individual, so you've worked through your stuff. And then it's a life process because then we have new experiences. So I can identify right off the bat a couple of things, but my father, there was a turning point for my father in terms of stress level, coping with stress, and how he coped with stress. There was a turning point. And I can identify that from age 3 to maybe just turning 7 years old, there were a lot of deaths in our family because I remember all the kids would go downstairs and play, and there was good food, and all the extended family would come, but they were grieving, and we knew that who died and that somebody died, and we knew who they were, but we're little kids, so we're processing differently than they are. But, there was a demarcation in my father's conduct in how he was walking through life. So when I was real little, um, and it was bedtime, my father would say, it's bedtime, and he would probably make a game of it, like chase me up the stairs. And then I would hide under the covers. He would come and tuck me in. And then little by slowly, the stress built. And every once in a while, maybe he would lose his temper, or maybe he would lose his patience, or things weren't fun. They just weren't as much fun. I still have a good upbringing. I still have a great life. He's still a great person, a great role model.
Sure.
But there was a switch. That 7-year-old, internalized that maybe I'm doing something wrong, and I developed an over-responsibility. An over-responsibility, people-pleasing. Then, on top of it, my mother was ill, and so she was bedridden for a year. I was 10 years old. So I'm like preparing meatloaf before I go to school in the morning,
Wow.
putting it in the fridge and trying to be so good. And most women are brought up to be very good girls. So you see how but that affected me. That affected my sense of myself.
And others may look at that and say, "Wow, that was challenging, but how would that affect you later in life?" But it does.
It does.
And I relate to a lot of that. My parents got divorced when I was very, very young. So right away, there's, abandonment and things like that. That could happen later in life.
Same for me. Yeah.
I was, a chunky kid, so I got bullied on the playground. So then there's that. And, I had 3 relatives, including my dad, pass away in the same year. And I don't even know if and this is when I was 21. I don't know if I fully dealt with that.
Right.
That's, a lot of this stuff gets buried until it comes up again. But unless you know, again, you don't know unless you know about these things and how it can impact you later in life.
Right. And even for my father, maybe he didn't have a whole lot of different stressors, but maybe he didn't process the grief of all these deaths in our family between those 4 years.
Right.
And who knows about that? But my father was also very expressive, and we worked things through. I started therapy after I graduated high school, because I went to college in New York City, so I could access a therapist very easily. It was like, "Hi,
Wow.
What's your name? Where do you live? And who's your therapist?" Because that's the introductory conversation.
Well, that's the way it is today. In fact, if you don't have a therapist, sometimes it's like, "You don't have one?" Or somebody will say, "I'm going to go talk to my therapist later. I'll catch up with you." But if you went back 20, 30 years ago, people would be like, "Oh, somebody's got a problem."
And even today, people are still judgmental about going. It's not as prevalent, but it is.
Well, those 2 words, mental health,
well, which should be deleted. Like a lot of people with issues that they are presenting problems that they want to work through, they literally talk about themselves like that. They're saying, "Well, it's my mental health." Well, mental health, well, if you have mental health, that's as good as having physical health. Is that what you're talking about? No, mental health means you've got a big problem.
Right. Right. Well, that's the perception of those two words. But then when you hear somebody say, you know what, I'm taking a mental health day, then it's like, champion. You're a champion for taking care of yourself in that regard.
Yes, yes,
Wow.
yes. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. And I think that where I was fortunate is my family was always able to sit around the table and discuss things and be open emotionally. Even my father, although he was stressed out, or my mother may have been stressed out, they were able to talk openly about that. And
That's
I don't think
huge.
that's common.
You are correct about that. And I really feel that maybe charted your course that you can express and pull things out of people as they try to express themselves because of that your upbringing.
Yeah, absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely. And to be able to be a good listener, because most parents, they want to be heard, or they want to have the what is that microphone that people put up for sports? The megaphone. I don't know what, but
Okay, yeah,
they want to be amplified. But
right.
really, the secret is just be yourself, be open, be expressive, and that models for the children in the family to be open and expressive and discuss things.
Are you a parent?
Yes, I am.
Knowing what you know now about everything that we're talking about, if you knew it then when your kids were younger, would you have parented differently?
Oh, for many examples, I
I
would
know, right?
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I'm
But I
not
will.
saying, Susie, I just want to say, not that we did anything wrong as parents, but you would have done it differently. And in my mind, my youngest is 16. In my mind, I can go back to different situations and maybe I lost my cool for a moment and I would go back and I'm like, I would have never done that again. Now I would understand how my kids may internalize that later in life, knowing what I and you, and as we talk about this, we all know now.
Right, right, right. Well, I remember, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I'm flipping through my files of oof, like those
Yeah.
were not pretty experiences. Um, However, my son and I have been very open about these things, right?
Nice.
And that's been a great thing. But I would say this. My son was able to express himself. Like, I do think that he was able to say, Mom or Mommy, depending on his age,
Hmm.
when you do this, it doesn't help me.
Wow.
And I was able to really listen. Like, I would say, Thank you. If you didn't tell me, I would be unconscious about this. Not that I would use that word back then,
Right.
but I would now. Like,
Well, the
I would,
difference is you listened because how many kids, teens, whatever can say you're not helping, and many parents might just blow that off, but your child is telling you something.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's great to be able to share these things. I think one time my son said that to me
Mm.
in front of my mother. And I think my mother was just like, wow, like I've never heard a conversation like this. But I will say this too. I don't know how much time we have,
Yeah,
but my
like
father,
a minute.
okay, my father also, as he was going through his dying process, he also he was very open with me. He said, I've always loved you so much because you've been so expressive. And I said, Well, you all taught me how to be like that. And he said, You've always been so open about your emotions. And he said, Your mother and I have made mistakes along the way, and we always tried to learn from them. We couldn't make them go away, but we tried to learn from them. And I remember having one of these conversations like that with my father and then going out to a different part of the house where my mother was. And I said, Wow, I just had this beautiful conversation with dad. And we've had these over the years. And my mother said, What mistakes? Like my mother was like,
Wow.
We didn't make mistakes. But my father was like, But my mother is also very understanding. And my mother taught me you don't have to defend yourself or explain yourself. You have to do what's best for you. So between the two of them, it's kind of
Beautiful.
interesting. Yeah.
Beautiful. In a sentence, final question here today. If you could go back to your younger self, what's the number one piece of advice that you would give yourself? One sentence, go.
Oh boy. I would know more immediately how loved I am.
Wow. That's also beautiful. Well, as I think back to it, I think my first response here is don't worry what other people think.
Yeah, I think that I kind of got that.
Yeah.
But I like that too. Like, that's huge.
Yeah, and it's I think for even teens today who are going through a lot, especially with social media and especially teen girls. Yeah, it's a whole other podcast coming. It's that worrying, because you hold yourself to the standards of others, and just do
no way to live.
No way to live.
Listen, my mom taught me you don't have to explain yourself to others.
Well, there you go, right there, and that's that's kind of where I was going with that.
And then it's full circle. It's full circle from where we started, because the social media thing just raises people's insecurities, and then they seek it more to understand, like, what am I supposed to be doing and supposed to be looking
supposed
like?
To in air quotes, supposed
in
to be
air
doing
quotes,
right, exactly.
In air quotes, yeah.
Your parents did a great job with you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I do think that they were really great.
Susie,
my mother is still alive. She's 96.
God bless her.
And clear.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to meet that woman.
I want you to.
Maybe get her on as a guest. You are wonderful to talk to. I can see why you excel in what you do in helping people. And you can do that virtually for pretty much anybody. How do we find you? What's the best way?
So this was like a clincher. Right now, I would ask people to request contact through my website.
Sure.
That's just one thing. In the future, we can get into other areas on how I can be reached. But right now, it would be through my website. And my website is my name. I don't know how you do this, but should I just spell it?
Please do.
Okay, thank you. So it's Susan Engel, SUSANENGEL LCSW.com.
It sounds complicated, but it's really not.
No, it's just my name.
Yeah.
And I had to put a hyphen. And then my license, my title is Licensed Clinical Social
Worker, LCSW. Susan Engel - or hyphen LCSW.com. Wonderful talking with you. Learned a lot, validated a lot of things that I wondered about, and so much more to talk about when we get together again. And it's all about helping people heal and feel better. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.